Hi, I'm Dave Sanko, and this is Coffee in the Capitol. Filling in for our regular host, Joe Gertis, who's taking off some well-deserved time. And joining me today is State Representative Kerry Benninghoff, one of the new generation of leaders in the State House of Representatives. A taxpayer advocate and a supporter of local government, he represents the 171st District in Center and Mifflin Counties in the heart of central Pennsylvania. Welcome, Representative Benninghoff. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having us.
So COVID-19 has halted a lot of things, but it didn't stop Harrisburg from moving forward with critical legislation that's given township officials flexibility in responding to the pandemic, as well as help with funding some of those costs. Passing Act 15, which allows us to continue to hold public meetings remotely to carry on official business for our residents, much like the legislature has been doing. Can you tell us how that's been going?
Obviously, COVID kind of caught everybody off guard. There was a lot of unknowns. I think there still are some unknowns, but we're getting a better grip on it as a nation and as a country and as a state. That said, we did want to send two messages. One, state government doesn't close down, just like you folks. Because there's a flood doesn't mean that somebody in the local townships doesn't need to be there to aid people, or if a road gets washed out or whatever else. And we felt it was important that in a crisis, the last thing people need to hear is the government's gone, they've shut down. Number two, we believe with today's technology, you're able to do this and that we are being paid, and we feel that we should be there providing the services.
Much of your recent work in Harrisburg has been about a partial budget. Governor Wolf had proposed charging local taxpayers twice for state police services. Any update on that?
Well, I think that is on the three strikes you're out plan. That doesn't generally get much popularity regardless who proposes it. I realize that there are differing opinions on those types of things. It's just not a very popular issue, and kudos to locals who provide the local services. I know in some places the word regionalization is not a popular word, but ironically, even in my own county, we have municipalities who provide mutual aid to each other on 3-11, 11-7 shifts, but trying to get them to combine police forces is not very easy. And I'm very well aware of the headaches of trying to combine retirement systems. And frankly, everybody wants to be chief. So if you happen to have two chiefs and you want to combine, how do you choose which chiefs? And we've even had instances here and where two were retiring at similar times, it could have done it. It's just not, for the amount of energy it takes to try to go down these paths, the productivity in these efforts just doesn't seem to be fruitful. One day, maybe this will happen a little bit better. I just don't see it in the near future.
Sure, yeah, and there's a big difference between the regionalization approaches and that of intergovernmental cooperation, where existing governments partner and do things together. And my gosh, I think 85% of local governments are doing stuff like that. So. And
I think that's important. You know, our sheriffs were at the one election pool today, and I said, oh boy, you both get to vote at the same time. No, actually, we're coming down here because we're providing mutual assistance to Bellefonte because they're short on a couple officers today. And I thought, bingo, that's the way to do it. We can do it combined. And I think we've given some different authority to the sheriff's office over the years to try to be able to be some assistance to you folks. But we're always open to ideas. Feel comfortable to talk to your legislators when you have new ideas coming down on these issues.
Oh, we appreciate that. Now, let me turn to another topic. Washington, D.C. has sent billions of dollars to Pennsylvania to help with recovery from the COVID virus. Recently, you helped ensure that some of that money gets to volunteer fire and EMS services, as well as local governments for critical related expenses. Can you tell municipal governments how they would go about accessing those funds from the county governments, which is where the legislature sent the dollars?
Well, you gave me a good lead on there. First of all, there have been a lot of money doled out in the specific budget plan that we did with had the COVID dollars in it. About $650 million went to the counties. So I would encourage you to make sure you get in line and let your counties know what's of interest. They too have to be spending on COVID-related issues. So my words of wisdom, be the firstest of the mostest. If you have true needs that you can show, document, start having those conversations now. As with any new pots of money, there's generally more askers than there is money to be doled out. But I think you folks have true needs and have felt impacts as well. And if there's an ability to get to that, I would encourage you to do that. There's also money in there, as you said, for EMS and fire, and that will be delineated out through the DCED program, very much along the same formula that we use now for fire and ambulance funding. but there's some pretty significant dollars. I think each fire company is going to be roughly available for about $15,000, and I think the ambulance company is about $9,000.
You were a co-sponsor of Act 89, the landmark transportation funding law, a couple years back. So I know that you understand the role that local governments play in transportation infrastructure. Next year, local roads and bridge fundings from liquid fuels dollars are going to be affected by reductions in driving and reductions in fuel purchases. Does the state have any plans to share any of the federal aid to help maintain local roads and bridge infrastructures?
One of the things that we were doing prior to pre-COVID was looking at other funding sources. There was a transportation task force put together, head up by Martina White down in the Philadelphia area, and we were just getting the beginnings of reviewing that and what might be able to be implemented. And the other thing that has been in discussions prior to that, COVID's kind of sucked the air out of the room, was as our vehicles change and we go to electric cars and our fuel efficiency gets higher, is it only going to be a system dependent on liquid fuels dollars, or do we need to start thinking about some other things? People want smooth roads. They want to have the expanded capacity, but they don't want to pay for it. We obviously will keep townships in mind in those types of situations. And when I say townships, I mean townships and boroughs, local government.
Sure.
Because, just like you, we got about 44,000 miles of roadway to take care of. We are challenged probably in Commonwealth a little bit more than some states. And the beauty of our hills and valleys and rivers and streams makes things problematic because we have so many additional bridge structures. So I hear what you're asking, and it will be part of our dialogue. We have a good local government chairman. I would encourage your members to be in dialogue with their state representatives. And as I said, get in line. Let people know if there's specific needs. I am a believer that Pennsylvanians and Americans are survivors, and they will do what they got to do, and we will bounce back. And hopefully we can get some dollars to you folks as well.
So speaking of infrastructure, we've everybody spent several months here locked down, working from home and schooling from home and telemedicine. It's become apparent to many that broadband internet capacity is lacking all over Pennsylvania, but especially in rural areas. Do you think there's any thought about a coordinated, comprehensive solution to help all Pennsylvanians get this access to broadband before we lose an entire generation getting left behind?
Well, in every great catastrophe, generally there's something positive comes out of that. I mean, you look about triage medicine, that's the result of warfare, that I kind of see this kind of being a kick in the butt on this issue because we have been forced into needing this, whether telecommunicating with a physician and her patient, as you and I are trying to do now, and or running state government and local governments. Number one, we proved it can happen. Number two, it should not be something that can only be in the urban areas and the rural areas are shown that they have the same kind of needs. We need to get that expanded. That said, we've had some discussions prior to all this. I think these discussions are going to have to change a little bit and be a lot more creative. I do know on my local level, there's some initiatives happening in the private sector, some people trying to expand out and actually set up things similar to an electric co-op. I actually like that concept, and it is beneficial. It does help get that last mile or two out. And I'm sitting there thinking prior to this discussion, is there a way that we can be incentivizing more public-private investment? I believe it's not as easy for us to mandate a Comcast or some telecommunication company to do something, but I do think there are ways that we can think about trying to incentivize without the Commonwealth losing money in order to incentivize you to get that broadband expanded.
Yeah, very good. So any final thoughts or comments about local government partners and how we can work together for all the citizens of the Commonwealth?
Two things I would say. Number one, never underestimate the great work you folks do and the impact you have. But more importantly, don't overestimate that all your elected officials in higher areas, especially those of us in the legislature who actually legislate, giving you authority to do things, totally understand what it is that you do. Love or hate the legislature, we've had a lot of turnover in the last 10, 12 years. We've almost completely flipped all the seats in the House of Representatives. And I share that with you, not as a negative, I share that as with, I tell a lot of organizations, don't forget that sometimes we need to remind people who you are and what you do. There's a reason why McDonald's Golden Arches have a little sign underneath there selling 20 billion hamburgers. Everybody knows they sell them, but if they think it's important enough to be advertising in their worldwide, then to me, that's a good parallel that the townships and the boroughs, people don't understand exactly what you do. And I'll give you a quick example. the whole right to know thing. We thought when we did the right to know and flip presumption that, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, public has the right to know, we need more transparency, and you only need a couple hecklers who all of a sudden want to right to know you to death and cause you a lot of time, anxiety, and money and legal costs. Not all the members know that's happening because it may not be happening in their township.
That's an excellent observation, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. That's all the time that we have today. Thanks again, Representative Benninghoff, for being our guest. Remember, if you like what you're seeing, subscribe to the PSATS YouTube channel and follow our social media pages for more township video news. Next Tuesday, look for Dave Talk, and as always, thanks for watching.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay.